Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Hopefully everybody is well and will be better. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular presentation, brothers and sisters, we do not intend for it to be long, but we do intend, brothers and sisters, to bring this out to the masses. Honoring of presidents and ownership, part 3. In part 1, we talked about, in part, George Washington being a slave master and so forth. That is on this channel. In part 2, we talked about the matter, brothers and sisters, of the trading that was going on with us as captives. And brothers and sisters, if I can be heard, and if people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard well, and people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. Thank you for that, my lady Sarai Michaela. We know and understand that today, so-called Labor Day, is a holiday for the nations, a holiday for many people. We wanted to take respectful advantage of this time, brothers and sisters, and get into this particular matter, this particular presentation. So as is the custom upon this matter, we're going to stop the camera, brothers and sisters, and we're going to ask you all to comment, to like, and to share. We're going to introduce this first in prayer and then get into the presentation. Modin Rabin, Lakaya Elahenu, Melek HaOlam, Borei HaShemayim, Wagam Kain Gorim HaAretz, Tiyana In Imrefi, Wagam Kain, Tikwabel Na In, Atarotse Etefilotenu. Most High God, God of the heavens and the earth, the one and the only, we come before you and ask you to be with our words, O Yah, and if it be your will to accept our prayer. Titain Lanu, Shalom Bebako Shaya, Wagam King, Tiyana Imak Shabotenu, Wagam King Libotenu. We ask you to be with our thoughts and with our hearts and to give us peace. Peace. Please, O Yah. Hallelujah. Amen. So, brothers and sisters, we're going to pull this up, if we will, brothers and sisters, and let us get into this. My lady Sarai wrote, Shalom, Kol Yisrael, in the 4 corners of the world. Most High bless each and every one. Mishpachah. Mishpachah meaning family, as we know. So, brothers and sisters, let us get into this. We ask you all to get your pens, your pads, and your paper and to take notes. We apologize for the tardiness. We intended this to be at 10:30, but due to technical matters, we wanted to straighten out. We're starting it at this particular time. Shalom, greetings, giving honor to the Creator of heaven and earth. This presentation is geared towards spreading the truth of world history to the people who care to hear it. In this presentation, we will honor the presidents and ownership. Please subscribe to the channel. So let us continue, brothers and sisters. Shalom, my brother, Yirmiyahu Yisrael. All right. Virginia, 1788. Now, with the time allotted, we don't want to rush this, but I am on a time frame. But brothers and sisters, let's look at this. Virginia became the 10th state to ratify the United States Constitution June 25th, 1788. That is not far after the matter of the Continental Congress beginning to end, or around that said time. It's not that very far from when America then declared itself independent. Independent of what? Independent of Britain. While our people were still held as captives. The British, we're going to point out in the next presentation, brothers and sisters, were hypocrites. After making sure that they were about the slave trade and promoting it and pushing it, They tried to come over to the United States where slavery was legalized, quote unquote, not righteous, but legal, and say, you know what? If the black man will sit there and join on with us, the British, then you gain your freedom. But the Americans who left from Britain, who's now in a revolutionary war, got the idea of enslaving the black man from the people whom they fighting against. So your whole style British is chump, for the lack of a better term. It's very hypocritical. Do you understand? It is something that is not upright. It's not a good standard. Virginia was the 5th state to enter the Union as a slave state. Virginia joined the Confederate States of America in April 17, 1861, and was readmitted to the Union January 26, 1870. So, brothers and sisters, when you look at the state of Virginia, some of us have relatives in Virginia. Do you know, pardon the language, that there was a place in Virginia called Niggerfoot, and they now call it Negrofoot? King, to get to that, did you know that? There was a place in Virginia called Niggerfoot because they found a black man's foot there and they called it that place. Virginia, brothers and sisters, the slave masters used to go, as shown in the movie Roots, to Maryland to pick up slaves, captives to be made into slaves, and then bring them down there. Taking Roots, the movie, for instance, Spotsylvania County, an hour away or so from Richmond, Virginia. Every time personally, when I'm in Virginia on the Megabus or Greyhound or any other aspect, my mind goes back into that history of that, having the address of the Confederate Museum and so forth. So now, as an Israelite, no, we don't believe in statues, but the reason why America was to bring down the statues of the Confederate Army is because they do not want it to be remembered. They want it to be pacified. This is why a brother does these kind of videos. So that way, when people try to talk about the matter of slavery, well, the Civil War didn't really happen because of slavery. Yes, it did. You taking away the economy. You best believe they're going to fight for what they feel is theirs. So as we went over before in a presentation called Was Slavery a Myth? The Southern states didn't think so. That's on this channel as well. This is why we ask you all to subscribe to such. We want to, brothers and sisters, point this out for edification purposes. Hoping and praying again that everybody is well and will be better. So let's look. All of the counties or so in Virginia. A through X. What is now, as pointed out here, called West Virginia, was part of Virginia until 1863. By then, the Civil War had already started. Now, when Lincoln, which we're going to get into as this is part 3, maybe by say part 10 or even after, we'll talk about Lincoln, right? Because as will be pointed out, when you marry somebody, you inherit what that person has. Why do you think, not trying to be funny, some women don't want to marry men who have child support? Or some men don't want to marry women who have child support because there are sisters who do pay child support, you know. You understand? Because then that bill could become yours. Well, brothers and sisters, Abraham Lincoln married Mary Todd. Mary Todd is the daughter of a slave master. So how can we think that Lincoln was not part of being a slave master when his wife had slaves? His father-in-law was a slave master. If you were so much against slavery, you would not marry into a family that endorses it. It's like telling a woman who marries a drug dealer, but she's against cocaine and crack. Like, oh, ma'am, you just married into that. You can't marry into something that you disagree with. Can't two walk together unless they agree? So, brothers and sisters, again, these are things we care to point out for edification purposes. All right? We're asking you all to subscribe to the channel, to comment, like, and share. Thank you. Get your pens, get your pad, get your paper, and take notes. William Byrd the First. He established himself in business by trading pots, pans, guns, and rum with the indigenous peoples in the interior of the quote state slash colony, aka Virginia. He also was about the trading of both Negroes and Indians as slaves. What? William Byrd. He died way before 1788. So now, as will be pointed out in the presentation that is to be called From Kemet to Compton Part 2, we asking you all to subscribe to the channel to check that out as well, brothers and sisters. The 1619 date were people brought to Virginia that were already captives in other places. We're going to point this out in history, brothers and sisters, and cite our sources. The purpose in this is not to sadden people, but because they want to teach, as the sister Gavera Kokavia Bat Hoshea pointed out, they want to sit there and teach in textbooks in school that the people just came over here as voluntary like workers to sit there and help build another society. That they was not put in the good ship Jesus with chains upon them, with one deck over and one deck under, where they who were on the bottom deck received the feces and the excrement from the people on top. That they did not receive the woman's menstrual flow from the people who were on top. That the people on the bottom deck did not sit there and sit in their own excrement. That their teeth were not broken out, so that way you can sit there and be force fed. That's why when you watch the movie that's old school called Ill-Gotten Gains about the slave trade, they were saying, don't eat, because they only fed you to sit there and keep you alive. When our people had a concept that said, sadly, as the prophet Jeremiah talked about, an Israelite prophet, Jeremiah was not a white man, that essentially stated what? Death shall be chosen over life. So in slavery, when they said, you only a slave because you were afraid to die, that became the option. Like, now I'm free. In the movie Roots, for instance, which is based in the state of Virginia, or at that time, colony of Virginia, whichever, Kunta was noticed for saying, they don't leave us, us. What has changed to these days? Get your passport. Hey, Kizzy, you got the moving papers. What's the difference? You go and pay for a passport. That is no different than your traveling papers. Thank you for that, Sarai, for your help with that. What is the difference between getting your passport and the traveling papers that was done in slavery? I'm not saying don't get a passport. It does help. And traveling does broaden your mind. You understand? But there is virtually no difference than being stuck somewhere, whether the so-called C-19, because they don't want you to say certain things online, or not, at an airport. And if you are unknown or don't know why you're in the country, because when me and my lady went to Costa Rica, they asked us, with the passports and everything in our hand, came off the flight, everything, showed it. And you're here to do what? They asked us, why are you here? It wasn't disrespectful. It's part of their procedure. What do you intend to do in our country? All right, thank you for paying. Stamp. Next. Next slide, please. William Byrd II. We read about his pops. Let's see what this guy was about. From day to night, William Byrd II. He attempted to maintain the business of the plantations. Sometimes they refer to the slave masters as the planters. He had merchandise shipped on the James River. The James River is one of the rivers in Virginia of today, and oversaw his overseers. He had tobacco shipped to London and continued with trafficking slaves with the Indians. He lived from 1674 to 1744. So what can we gather in this? He was trafficking slaves with the Indians. So hold on. There was indigenous Indians that was trading black men with white men as slaves? You mean the white man and the Indian man was trading the black men as slaves? Yes. This is why you find the Cherokee people being defeated in 1842 in Oklahoma after what they call the Trail of Tears. The same people that we're going to get into later on with the seventh president of the United States. They wound up enslaving the black man, so the oppressed became oppressors, you might say. The white man oppressed the native indigenous people, and then they in turn joined the white man to oppress the black man. See, when we deal with this, we bring this out. And don't think, and this is one of the saddest things I've found in studying, black women were raped in slavery by whom? White and black men. Did you know that? Did you know there were slaves that was raping black women who were also slaves? That's one of the saddest things I ever read in studying about this kind of subject. You took on the spirit of the oppressor. And that's not good. You understand? You shall not deal with rigor with anyone, for you know the heart of the slave, having been slaves in Egypt, O Israel. So you got to know how to treat people. You know how it is when you got a boss or a manager or supervisor on your back. So why would you, while trying to establish something, follow that same pattern? Learn from others' mistakes, perhaps. All right? So we just want to point that out. We're asking you all, if you're feeling well, hopefully Creator bless you, feel better. If I can be heard well and you in good spirits, please type in the number 4. So you have William Byrd, and then now here William Byrd II. And he traded tobacco and had it shipped to London. So the tobacco that we was picking, the indigo we was picking, the cotton we was picking, you hear them sitting there talking about cotton is king. And you ain't never gonna make war against this. Slavery is the cornerstone of every Republican edifice. That is what South Carolina stated. We're going to do a presentation solely on South Carolina and the slavery, because when I lived and was staying in Chester, South Carolina, I found out that white people in South Carolina go to Charleston every year by where the slave trade was to sit there and commemorate what their ancestors did in 2021 and 2020 and so forth. All right, so these are things we want to point out for reference purposes. All right, so let us continue, brothers and sisters, in that particular manner. Thank you for that. All right, now here's the guy that we're talking about, William Byrd II. Now, he died in the year 1744. Why does that become important? America didn't have what they called their first president until 1789. So that means 40 so years before then, you was already involved in slavery since colonial America. We want to point that out. Next part, please. The guy to the right, a slave master. The tobacco business between Virginia and Maryland was similar. The more labor was done by black slaves, and that white indentured servants were scarce. So what are we pointing out in this, brothers and sisters? Is that the slave trade was not a myth, and what the people were made to pick in the fields was not a myth. And what else can we gather in this particular manner, family? We, the indigenous of the earth, were picked up by people, they knowing who they were picking up and bringing over, in order to work the earth. Maybe they couldn't work the earth that we could, but they had to do it through force. They couldn't even do it through trading with the people in that manner. So they can, quote, gain all the revenue and reaping of all the, quote, benefits of for themselves. Charles Carroll in 1764 had 40,000 acres, 285 slaves, and land in Maryland. So to the guy to the right that we're talking about is this gentleman right here. Now, whom we talked about before, George Washington, was born in 1732 and he died in 1799. This guy here, while Washington was alive, had 285 slaves. In a presentation called The Honoring of 12 Presidents and Ownership, we went over the fact that George Washington traded black people as slaves between what is now the United States and the West Indies. So again, we cannot separate the so-called black man that's in the West Indies and the so-called black American, because that concept right there just goes to show that it defies history and what the people went through. So tobacco, cotton, and the islands, sometimes cotton, sugar, and so forth was used from the earth resources by the natural people of the earth, being made into captives in the world for the benefit of the captors. So this is what we want to point out. Any questions or comments, please feel free to type it in the chat. Thank you. Let us talk about New England in that manner. Let's go on, family. The people in New England found out that money can be made between them and the world by trading with the world. Rum and the traffic of slaves was profitable to the people of New England. While in Rhode Island was rich of the slave trade, Boston was rich off of the rum trade. So what are we gathering in this particular case? Rhode Island, slave trade. Boston, which is in Massachusetts, the rum trade. But what was the rum being traded for and with? It had involvement of slaves as well. You understand? So we don't want to, not to be funny, lose sight of that and what happened with the captives, brothers and sisters. All right? We do not, again, want to, quote, lose sight of that. Let us, brothers and sisters, continue in this manner. All right? Here we see what? The Gold Coast, Ivory Coast, slave trade coast. We're going to circle in this manner, right? We're going to use the pen as I ask people to get their pen, right? Slave Coast in this manner. Gold Coast, Ivory Coast. So you find people called Ivorian, when you find people called whatever other name and so forth and so on, they will have ships that were being used all throughout here and other places and then being brought over to the Western Hemisphere. Now, sometimes people try to say, oh, the Atlantic slave trade was a myth. And in the book that I wrote that I'm going to show later, called From Assyria to America, and a part called From Ghana to Georgia, we went over that for edification purposes. You understand? So, just want to show what that is in that case. Next slide. John Hancock, a governor of Massachusetts. The governor of Massachusetts, shown to the right, petitioned to the governor of Martinique in the 18th century regarding the matter of kidnapping and enslavement of black people. Okay. Massachusetts ended slavery in 1783. What are we looking at? Remember, the United States of America, as we know it by name, did not come, brothers and sisters, until 1776. So in 1783, when Massachusetts ended slavery, when America declared its independence, black people in the state of Massachusetts were still enslaved. It went from colonial to state slavery. Some refer to it as the antebellum period or the peculiar institution, if we will, in history. So let's look, brothers and sisters. This is John Hancock. He petitioned the governor of Martinique in the 18th century regarding the matter of kidnapping and enslavement of black people. Why do we want to point that out? Because the black people who were free in Massachusetts petitioned the governor about that particular matter, brothers and sisters, for those who know that history. And he reached out, Martinique being a French colony in the West Indies, or what they call the French West Indies, about such. So what can we gather? The trading of black people as slaves was done between the West Indies and the United States after being shipped from Africa. All right? So these are things we want to point out for reference purposes. Remember, America didn't have its president until 1789. I want to emphasize that because Washington was already trading black people since the 1760s. Next slide. States in the North and their acts after the Revolutionary War. Vermont and New Hampshire in 1777 and 1789 made slavery illegal. Pennsylvania and Rhode Island in 1780 and 1784 made it illegal. New York and New Jersey in 1827 and 1804. Hold on. 1827? You mean New York, good old Apple, was a slave state until toward the end of the 1820s? Yeah, that's how you get what they call Wall Street, for those who know that history. They would have black people lined up on the wall. Did you know that? Yeah, for those who are interested in that history. And New Jersey. So you had York of old and Jersey of old in England. Then you had New York and New Jersey, all part of what we call New England. See, this is why on this so-called Labor Day, when black people, no disrespect, are celebrating Labor Day, we work. I don't think, I just work. That kind of mentality. Who are we working for? Who are we working toward? Because we've been programmed, brain conditioned, and brainwashed to think that if we work for ourselves, you're a racist. If you hire only black people at your job, then you're a racist. But the Italians don't mind doing that when they have their construction site. Jewish people don't mind doing that. Oh, they have black people and Hispanics working on holy days when the Jewish people is keeping Sabbath. That's when they have that, and I've seen it. I'm not playing holier than thou. Don't ask me how I seen people working on the Shabbat. I wasn't always living this way in life as Israel, and I'm glad I'm coming back into it. That's all I'm going to say on that. But brothers and sisters, getting back into this matter right here, Vermont, New Hampshire, 1700s, New York, New Jersey, 1800s. Can we really think that only 5% of landowners were slave owners? That's another thing they try to say. Only 5% of the people of the population were slave owners. Really? So that's why Texas and other states like Mississippi said they're going to go to war and succeed from the Union because they want to keep what they call states' rights, which included slavery. See, these presentations are done to show the evidence. You're not going to sit there, okay, while we know we're not going to get reparations from you all because you tax the money that we work for. So we already know that's the case. And then you add tax on things that we buy. We work for money, then you tax that. And then when we go to buy things after the money's been taxed, there's a tax to that. And we don't have what? No black delegate. Taxation, as is known, without representation. Because nobody represents us. And even if you got your own flag in the West Indies, and I'm not trying to be tribal, do they still represent you, or are they just sitting there as a representative? Note the difference between sitting there for you. We rep our flag. We've been independent from Britain. We've been independent, Haiti, from France. We've been independent from France, other places such as Guadeloupe and so forth. But do those people still represent you, or do they sit as a representative? There's a difference. Know the difference, people. You understand? Let's go on and look at this. So, the Revolutionary War fought in the 1700s from 1775, correct me if I stand to be corrected, until 1783, around that ballpark figure. So you have the redcoats versus that. Now, who are walking around now with blue and red fighting? Don't tell me we did not take over the ways of our presence. Don't tell me we have not taken over the ways of our oppressors, which is a sad thing. Let's go on, family. The area where Jefferson was born, also the image on the nickel. Jefferson saw where the fence separated his from the slave cabins. Who Jefferson? We're talking about Thomas Jefferson. Let's get into this. Thomas Jefferson had over 600 slaves. He has a college named after him in New York, in Mississippi, and a middle school named after him in Oregon. So they're naming schools in different states in honor of slave masters. Let's go on, brothers and sisters. In the area, in the era, that's the time frame, of 1803. The president at the time, Thomas Jefferson, born the same year George Washington had slaves at age 11, that's to say in the 1740s, the Louisiana Purchase was made, and this expanded the territory of the United States. Also, the discussion of the expansion of slavery. So let's see the land growing for the American people, and along with it came the discussion of, oh, you know, we got to sit there and get more slaves, because we got to have more people to sit there and work this land. Why? Because white man, you're not indigenous to this earth, man. Israelites got different concepts. Are you Japhet? Are you Esau? Are you Cain? Are you Canaan? Who are you? I don't know, different concepts. Are you Gehazi? Were you the ones cursed with leprosy? This is not to be racial or racist, but for you to sit there and be known as the pirates of the sea, and got to go to people on land to take them from a land to work another land, because the land don't yield to you, Cain. You shed the blood of your brother. It's not going to yield to you. So you got to go and get somebody else. Japhet, from the Hebrew word patah, which means to deceive. Is that you? Do you want to sit there and use that as a form of deception? Edom, who wanted to spread his seed all over the earth and run from the prophecy of Obadiah. Is that you? Gehazi, whose seed is cursed with leprosy. Because Leviticus says if there be a white rising in the skin and the hair that'll be yellow, that person has what? Leprosy. So you could fit who knows what. Japhet, Edom, Japhet, and Gehazi. Who knows? You understand? But getting back to us and where we fit in at, we want to point this out for reference purposes. This is the symbol on the nickel. And that's in Monticello, New York. That's the headquarters of Thomas Jefferson's slave quarters. Right upstate in New York. Let's continue, brothers and sisters. Letter by Hannah, picture of Robert Hughes and a picture of Hubbard, the runaway from the anti-slavery record 1837. You know who Robert Hughes is? The gentleman that you see there on the right-hand side. That was Thomas Jefferson's slave. Did you know that? So, brothers and sisters, letter by Hannah. Master, I write you a few lines to let you know that your house and furniture are all safe, and I expect you would be glad to know. So there were slaves who could read and write. And she is saying what? Master, I write you a few lines to let you know that your house and furniture all safe, boss. This is not to knock our ancestors and the captivity that we suffered, but we just want to point this out for reference purposes with the time allotted. Let's go on, family. Benjamin Banneker called Thomas Jefferson a hypocrite. Let's see. Benjamin Banneker said a copy of his manuscript to Thomas Jefferson. In such he stated that he was of the African race, but free, not under tyrannical thraldom and inhumane captivity to which too many of my brethren, that's to say Benjamin Banneker's brethren, are doomed. Jefferson, you are guilty of that most criminal act which you professedly detested in others, with respect to yourselves. So why are you up there saying, we need to be free from the British? Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Banneker done told you a hypocrite because you enslaved my brothers of the African race. Now, let's just close this out because this is the end of the PowerPoint, brothers and sisters. And that is to say African. Whether it comes from Scipio-Africanus or not, it's a continent. Israelites were mistaken in the scriptures as people who you would call Africans. They was mistaken as Ethiopians. They was mistaken, brothers and sisters, as Egyptians. And Josephus even points that out. So Benjamin Banneker, who helped design the first wooden clock in the United States and helped map out the design of Washington, D.C., brothers and sisters, we want to point this out for reference purposes. In part 2, we spoke about us talking about Thomas Jefferson. Did you know that? So, brothers and sisters, who was Hubbard? Hubbard was a slave that ran away from his slave master and then was captured and brought back and then beaten and then sold again. So, brothers and sisters, turning the camera on here as we close this out and giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. Asking you all to subscribe to the channel and to comment, like, and share. This is not based on racism. This is based upon what we can prove upon factual evidence. You can get this book here, Hebrew is Easy, Volume 1. That goes over the alphabet and the vowels. You can get this book here, Hebrew is Easy, Volume 2. This goes over vocabulary and grammar. You can get this book here, Hebrew is Easy, Volume 3. This book is based upon verbs. You can get this book here, Hebrew is Easy, Volume 4. This book is based upon nouns. You can get this book here, Hebrew is Easy, Volume 5. This book is based upon conversations in biblical Hebrew. You can get this book here, Hebrew is Easy, Volume 6. You may want to reach out to Chief Naftali at G60GRAFIXPLUS@gmail.com. The information is right here. He's the one who did the cover. This is a book that I made in honor of my mother. May my mother rest in peace. And this book gets into the kind of conversations that children would have with their parents. This book here, Chronicles of a Black Woman's Soul in and Out of Time. You can find this inside of the description of the video on how to get this book online, on Amazon, or you can use the number that you see going across the screen for such, all right? Or 917-463-8149 for those interested in getting the book. This is a book of poetry. This is a book that I've read myself. It is not fake. Some of the stories are funny. Some of them are sad, but none are fake. Hebrew for Couples. All right, hopefully they open Bear Mountain soon. This is a book that I wrote along with my lady, Hebrew for Couples Part 1. And this is, I think, the best cover ever made. Hebrew for Couples Part 2. All right, and Hebrew for Couples Part 3. All right, just want to point that out for reference purposes. So, brothers and sisters, and giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. In closing out, we want to show the other books, if we will. All right. We have here, brothers and sisters, right? Deuteronomy 28:15-68. This is a book you can get. All of these books you can get on Amazon. You can type it in by title, or you can type it in by author name. Vincent Hutchinson. I did that in honor of my dad. From Assyria to America, the book we spoke about before. This is a book, brothers and sisters, for those who are interested, that gets into a lot of history. Brothers and sisters, and continuing and closing out with the time allotted, thank you all for such, right? We are going to go over Egypt Talk and Writing. This book right here, you can get also on Amazon. Now, for whatever reason, they banned it from BarnesandNobles.com. I don't know, but why? They still have it on Amazon, which is cool for those interested. Now, brothers and sisters, this book right here, Israelite History as it relates to the world, deals a lot with Israelites in ancient Israel. And then there's a part that I'm going to read very quickly right now, brothers and sisters. Deuteronomy 28:66. In the morning thou shalt say, what God it were even. And at evening thou shalt say, what God it were morning. For the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. Deuteronomy 28:66. A lot of niggas at slavery time worked so hard that they hated to see the sunrise in the morning. Slavery was a bad thing because some white folks didn't treat their niggas right. A slave testimony of Rita Sorrell from North Carolina. It said what? In the morning thou shalt say, what God it were even. And at evening thou shalt say, what God it were morning. A lot of niggas in slavery time worked so hard, they said they hated to see the sun rise in the morning. Ask your Khazarian friend if they can go in Deuteronomy 28 and make a book of such. Let that be known who that prophecy fit. In this book, I advertise From Assyria to America Part 2. If you love pictures, this has over 80 pictures on historical references. I should probably subtitle it a picture book for those interested. All right. And it's actually my little princess, when I was doing this, to say put more pictures in it. It makes the people want to, see more pictures than just words. A picture's worth 1,000 words. I don't know where she got the saying from, but okay. So, brothers and sisters, in closing out this particular part, we ask you all to subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share. All right. My time on this has met its match. Subscribe to the channel. I intend maybe to come along later. Those who subscribe will get the notification. All right. Giving honor and praise to the creator of heaven and earth. Most I be with you all. Hopefully everybody is well and will be better. Thank you, my lady Sarai, for helping. Thank you, my brother Yirmiyahu Yisrael. Again, you see the Cash App and the PayPal info. A brother can use the help. I'm not going to sit here and lie. So in that particular case, shalom. Most I bless us all. Thank you for that.